Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 65 of the OG Technically Trek. I am your host, Dave Prime. Over there is our ditzy witch, Captain Katie. How are you doing this afternoon? Well, for you this morning, my dear.
Technical difficulties again.
What's that?
Are we having technical difficulties again?
Well, everything looks fine now, but yeah, you just look like you kind of nodded off there for a second.
No, everything just froze. My apologies, people, but everything froze. I don't know what happened. Welcome to Technically Track. I'll hand you over to Dave.
All right. Let's see. I was just asking how you were doing. We'll be talking about something very important in a second, but other than that, how's things been going with you the past week?
In all honesty, a big bucket of stress.
Yeesh.
But yeah, a big bucket of stress. But I'm alive. Nobody got stabbed with a fork. Yay! Um, but it's been quite stressful across here and your side of the pond, for very different reasons. Been very emotional. So I've been doing a lot of deep meditations just to recenter myself, and voila.
Yeah, see, yeah, see, I can understand the stress. It's been kind of a little chaotic for me as well, trying to juggle my AA meetings, trying to make money with my job at Lyft, and then this past weekend was Pride. So I'm saying I'm going to shut my window because something's going on outside. But yeah, it's within the DT family, the Dangerous Thoughts family. Saying just want to bring some attention for some people that may or may not know, but our friend, my friend Manu Intirami and his heterosexual life mate, as he likes to call her, the lady Valerie Boggs. Say back on Thursday, she did suffer a debilitating heart attack, and she's been in the hospital ever since. And yeah, she's suffered some setbacks. She had at least one other heart attack. The first one, Manu was saying that they were administering CPR for close to 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And but
He
she
actually
did wake
thought
up.
that.
Yeah, she did wake up briefly while he actually went home to try and get some sleep, and they took the tube out of her mouth, but then she suffered another heart attack. And he's been fighting with the hospital. He mentioned at one point that he was forbidden to come to the hospital for a day for 24 hours. So I don't know the full story on that, but he started a GoFundMe, and see, I see that you donated to that, Katie, which is awesome.
I did. I did. I can't get over there to give my support in person, so I'm supporting in any way that I can, but I'm also trying to save up a hell of a lot and try and get things sorted because I want to get across the pond as soon as possible so I can
Oh,
see everyone.
absolutely. But in 2 days, over $3,200 has already been raised on the GoFundMe for to help pay for what's going to be likely tens of thousands of dollars in medical bills because the American medical process and all that's just totally fucked up. I mean, it's a mess. See, I got a virtual appointment with my doctor tomorrow, so I'm gotta make a list of stuff that I need to talk to him about that I forgot to mention at my in-person meetings. So it's going to be interesting to see how that goes. But in the description down below, you can find a link for Mana's GoFundMe. See whether it's $5, $10, $100, whatever you can afford. That doesn't put you in a financial bind because that's the last thing that Mana wants to have happen is having someone suffer financially to help them out. But
Yeah.
hopefully I'll once she's alert again and can take visitors, I plan on swinging by the the hospital to give her some positive energy because the more positive energy anyone can give, the better, because this is going to be bound to be a long road to recovery for Val. So our hearts are out to them.
Yes, we love you, Val. And you are a warrior, my darling, and we are right by your side fighting with you.
Yes, but yeah, Sam. So we're uh, I love my allergies. That's one of the things I forgot to talk to my doctor about last month, which I'm definitely going to talk to him tomorrow. Saying I need medication for my allergies
Yes, you do,
because
darling.
they
I
like I
love
said,
that.
it was like right around the beginning of the month. It just damn it. I was doing fine, and then it just hit me like a ton of bricks. But we're going to talk about Picard tonight. We've been doing character profiles essentially the last couple of weeks, and we're going to be doing a big one next week. So we'll talk about that more later. But Jean-Luc Picard, the man, the myth, the legend, is saying from his humble beginnings working on the Stargazer, saying I decided to do Picard today because someone did the math a while back, and based on the way the star dates were, because star dates can one day can be multiple days. Because I mean, you got 1,000 days in a
Yeah,
star date in a 365-day calendar year. But based on the episode
yeah.
of Pegasus, when we said Picard had "I'm a role model," let's say that is today. So we're going to talk about him. We're going to talk about anything that we want on Picard, his early days as Stargazer, captain of the Enterprise D, the E, the La Serena with Picard when he became essentially a golem, an android. That Yeah, it's going to be. I think this will be a fun conversation. Unfortunately, one of our regulars, Tyson Strasberg, he had other commitments. He's not going to be able to make it tonight, so he sends his love and support to us as well. So, but for the here and now, and say anyone that wants to partake, that's one thing that I've been really bad about mentioning. There's the link down below in the YouTube description that takes you to StreamYard. It'll allow you to link up to the live chat. This is probably like the only one of the only Star Trek chats that allows like live participation. A lot of people, they can do it, do YouTube chats and things like this. This gives you the ability of actually coming on camera, talking to us, positives, negatives, within reason. If you're gonna troll us, you're gonna be gone. But if you're camera shy, you can just you can turn your camera off and you can still talk. See, I got my cute little Star Trek avatar I made. I forget which website I had that one doing. Back then, I'm holding a Romulan ale. Now, being a year sober, say that's a non-alcoholic ale. But anywho, so we've got
Oh,
Travis backstage. How's it going, man? You're mute. Oh, yeah, now you're not muted.
It's going great. I mean, great I could say, but in a sense, it's going okay, okay
Mm.
for the time being and stuff. Given the times we're living in and stuff and everything. But first off, let me just say that my heart goes out to Mono and Val. You know, we all do wish her the best and you know a speedy recovery and
Mm.
everything. I mean, that's one of the things. Whenever you see Manu Dave, extend my wishes to him and my
Oh yeah,
thoughts and prayers and stuff
yeah.
and
So
everything.
I've been texting with him about it and all that. So y'all definitely let him know. And I almost forgot one of the important things is to talk up my sponsor, Dubby Energy Drinks. He's saying we got a lot of great tumblers. It's like this one's my favorite because you guys know why, because he's cute. I want to dress like him up for Halloween, but I just don't think I can pull off the long hair like he can, the dreads. But yeah, if you go to w.gg and use the code TEKTREK, TEKTREK, you get 10% off your order. And see, there are some bundle deals that they have. You can get like four beverages for $100. You can't use the code on those because they're already discounted. But like the tumblers, one-off beverages like s'mores and Grandpa's denture water, which I want to still try and get some of that before it sells out, just to see what the heck it tastes like. Just it sounds nasty, but it also sounds interesting at the same time. But yeah, Tech Trek, TEK, TREK, get 10% off your order at w.gg. So yeah, so Captain Picard, Jean-Luc Picard, JL as Raffi liked to refer to him as, which really kind of got under his skin a little bit, but he kind of just rolled with it at one point. The same, but what are some of your guys' thoughts on Picard? Saying, because I mean, he kind of definitely had a big arc in the Next Generation, because at the very beginning, I mean, he was totally adamant against children. Hi, fellow Dave. Let's see.
Another day.
Yes, they all stay connected. See, yeah, that is true. See, I've honestly, as big of a Star Trek fan as I've been, I've only been to one actual Star Trek convention, and that was back in 1994, right after I graduated high school. Had a Marina Sirtis and Grace Lee Whitney were the actors that were there for that convention. And say, so talking about
I'm missing
Picard,
out on a Star Trek
what's
convention.
that?
I'm missing out on a Star Trek convention.
Mm.
The same company who did the Stargate convention that I went to, Star Fury, they're doing a Star Trek convention in October, but I can't go. And I'm really, really upset because Jonathan Frakes is going to be there.
Mm. Yeah.
And Terry Farrell as well. I mean, there's one or two of them that are there that I've already met. Melissa Navia and Nicole DeBoer's just been announced. So, but I met her at the Stargate convention.
Yeah,
But
yeah, I've been to a couple of Comic Cons that have had Star Trek actors, so I've seen Patrick Stewart
yeah,
in person. The hall that they had him in was standing room only. It was
yeah,
packed. I was at he was about like that big, because I mean I was so far back in the audience, but I mean got to hear him speak in person, which was a total delight. But 2 years ago, right when I first moved here to the Springs, Colorado City Comic Con, they just finished Picard season 3, and they had pretty much everybody here: Frakes and Sirtis and Stewart and Dorn. Like they were
wow.
all here, and I was just like, I didn't have the money to get to the convention. And yeah, say Jeff, welcome back. Yeah, he texted me on Twitter earlier today saying, yeah, he visited Bloomington, Indiana, and got a picture of the Janeway statue. So that
Oh,
Oh,
that's
what
really
wow.
cool. Yeah, say that and say I haven't visited Indiana yet, so that's Bloomington's going to be on my list of places to go, so I can get my picture next to her statue / bust.
Oh, I'd love to do that. I would really love to go to Bloomington so that I could get a picture with that statue, because that would be something. And it'd be like one of my very few Trek things that I would have. Because I don't have any. Honestly, the only Trek things that I've got is I've got like photos and autographs from like 4 Star Trek actors.
Yeah. And my one of my favorites, Jonathan Del Arco. So I just wrote to him because, and he donated 2 photos for a silent auction for the Gay Lesbian Straight Education Network when I was a co-chair of the Seattle Washington State chapter. Yeah, just because he's gay. The actor himself is gay, so but yeah, see, also got another gay actor his autograph. The
it's
K
funny, you
rhymes
know
That's
with
what?
amazing.
gay. But yeah,
Bloomington, Indiana.
we want to talk about. Uh-oh, did we lose Travis?
Can you hear me?
Yeah,
There
I
he
can
is.
hear you.
I was gonna say Bloomington, Indiana is just over 3.5 hours from me.
Yeah, same Bloomington. That's a bit of a drive for me.
I've been to Indiana before. I've been to Indianapolis and stuff. So I mean, it wouldn't be big of a stretch for me to get to the drive to Bloomington.
Yeah, I think it's about a 7-hour flight direct for me. So,
Yeah,
um, but no, I
it's
would really, really love to meet Patrick Stewart because as much as I would love to speak to him about Star Trek, I would just want to say to him how much I love him as Ebenezer Scrooge in A Christmas Carol because he really did that role justice. And A Christmas Carol has always been like my Christmas story. Like I've grown up with that story. And I mean, I love Muppet Christmas Carol as well, but like Patrick Stewart for me, it is a brilliant Ebenezer Scrooge, but also he was in Moby Dick as well.
hmm
He played Ahab, and I actually find that really, really good because that was brought up in First Contact with Picard.
Captain Aham's got to
Um,
get his way.
yeah, and I love that connection. And I would love to speak to him about those roles as well as Picard. But I mean, we are here to talk about Picard.
Yeah, you were trying to say something,
So
Travis?
No, I'm not saying anything.
Okay, it sounded like your mouth was starting to move, so you were trying to say something, but
Oh,
uh,
no.
yeah, but I was saying, yeah, David here, he's met both the captains, so I'm jealous. Yeah, see, even though I've worked worked in the media, worked at a TV station. Yeah, so like Grace Lee Whitney, Yeoman Rand. I mean, she was so down to earth, so easy to talk to. And say, but Curtis, she was just like sign, because everyone wanted to see her. It's supposed to have been DeForest Kelly, but that's for another day. We want to talk about Picard and saying,
yes, we
as I
do.
was saying earlier, saying his character arc, saying went from totally like no kids on the bridge. Then Wesley pops in on the first episode, and of course Dr. Crusher just says he's on the turbo lift. He's not on the bridge. But as the series kind of went forward, even up to Captain Picard Day, he started to warm up to kids a little bit more. He still was a little standoffish,
Well, yeah,
but
and one thing that I loved about Picard's entire story arc is he evolved so much from like Encounter at Farpoint to the final episode of Picard. And
mhm,
I don't just mean evolved as in, he became an android. I don't mean in that sense. What I mean is he stayed true to himself and his beliefs, but he still you still saw his evolution, like you just said, like with how he kind of like softened towards kids a little bit, and that really showed in. Hmm, Oh, I can't remember the episode. Yeah, it was the episode where it was Captain Picard Day, I think, and he was giving the kids a tour, and I can't remember what happened. It's been quite a while.
you probably thinking a disaster when he got stuck on the turbo lift with those three kids, Jay Gordon.
Yeah,
I forget the other two kids' names off that. Jay Gordon just popped in my head for some reason. Yeah,
yeah, but
of course,
he
that kid sassed him a little bit. Picard called him Jay, and he's like, "It's Jay Gordon."
but that was a really big test for Picard because he really cannot abide children. He doesn't know how to. It's not that he doesn't like them. I don't think it's the fact that he's never liked them. He just doesn't know how to be around them, and so there's a bit of a clash there. And he went through such a big change in that episode, but he still remained so himself. It was actually quite hilarious for me to watch because Picard is very stoic, and he's oh, don't even get me started on Barkley. I absolutely
Yeah.
adore that guy. Gotta love Reg.
I think we can all relate to Barkley in some fashion, but yeah, to have a character like that, and yeah, that's probably another one of Picard's greatest moments, because when Barkley first came on board, like Wesley gave him the nickname of Broccoli,
Yeah,
and say when Barkley's on the bridge and trying to brief Picard on stuff and say, "Well done, thank you, Mr. Broccoli," and his face white as a ghost. He's like, Barkley.
yeah. But no, I really did love that episode where he got stuck with the kids, because he even gave them some of his pips to like make them honorary officers, and he gave them duties, and so he still remained himself, but you did see the softer side of him a little bit, and he really did work them like officers, but in a little bit of a softer way, and it was actually quite funny. And then singing Frere Jacques,
Mhm.
I actually love that. I was actually singing along with him when like every single time I watch the episode, I always sing along, because I think that's the only thing I managed to ever play on piano, um, because I couldn't get my left hand to do what my right hand, different to my right, and it was really strange. But I absolutely love that episode, and it did bring out a different side of him, and he realised that children are not the epitome of evil, that they are nothing to be feared.
Jay Gordon, Marissa, and Patterson were the kids' names.
Yes. Yeah, I remember Jay Gordon, but I never remember the others' names. But they adapted very well to Picard as well, even though they were really scared, and they're like, "Oh my God, we are like stuck in the turbo lift with the captain," and you saw that dread on their faces, and it wasn't just the fear of what was happening. And I actually laughed a little bit. Like I said, I found it quite hilarious to see not the danger side of it, but just the fact that they were stuck together, and they they were all having to adapt,
Mhm.
and it was just I had little giggles along the way, and for me that was quite a precious moment. That episode, there was a lot of precious moments in that episode with Picard and the kids.
Yeah, and trying to think another. Um, why am I blanking on the name of the episode all of a sudden? The 2-part episode where he was undercover as Galen, which I think was brilliant on Picard's part by using his professor's name as an alias when he was with those rogue terrorists.
You talking about Gambit?
Yes, Gambit. Thank you. See, so I'm not there are a few that's like, oh, I can give you a whole spiel on an episode, but I just sometimes just can't think of the name. But
I'm the same though. I can very rarely remember names of episodes.
when you do, it's brilliant.
I know, I'm so proud of myself.
But yeah, the way he was able to dive into that role, especially even after Riker got captured by Bran, which, remember that character's name, just in and out of the head. See that was a good episode where a little intrigue kind of, we get to see a side of Picard we don't normally see during the rest of the series, especially when he starts doing like
Yeah.
the archaeology, because that's one thing that he did for several years after he lost the Stargazer. Because there's about a nine-year gap between losing the Stargazer and getting another command. So there's all this beta canon that what did Picard do during those 9 years?
You remember
Oh yeah.
he was punished. He was prosecuted by Philip Lavoie,
Mm-hmm.
Captain Philip Lavoie, and stuff. And of course, they had history together.
Yeah. But that trial definitely didn't take 9 years. So.
No, 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 no. In that meantime, she prosecuted him, which you could say led to, I guess, brief sabbatical for him.
Mm-hmm. Which, like I said, he did like archaeology and things like that. So just like. So I don't know if that might have had something to do more towards with his aversion towards children in the early episodes. Because essentially, when Riker first came on board, he just told Riker, saying, "Don't make me look like an ass in front of kids." They put children on my ship. He's like, ah.
See, one thing that always stands out with me is the episode, what's it called? Menage a Troy.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
When he gives that speech, oh my word! Honestly, I that broke me. It really did, because I mean, everybody knows that Patrick Stewart is a
Shakespearean
theatre
actor.
actor, and mainly Shakespeare, yeah. And the fact that he just started spouting all this on the bridge at the view screen, it was just, that broke me. I actually struggle watching that episode because I'm giggling from the off because I know what's coming. And then when that scene plays out, I'm just broken. The cackle is much, but he does it so well. He really does, and it's just like all of a sudden he's on the stage, and he like his gestures, his facial expressions, everything are so on point.
Oh, yeah,
But
and then Loxana, I think, kind of picked up on what he was doing, because earlier on, saying she's just started spouting off all her saying all her past lovers, and it's just like, wow, Troy's mom was a bit of a slut, saying with all these like trysts and things like that. But when she's like, "Oh, you told me you didn't want to hear about those," and she's like, and then she's just like, "The only thing you can give me is over Tog's dead body," and Picard's like, "That can't be arranged."
but yeah, that rendition of Shakespeare that he gave, it was actually Shakespeare's Sonnet 141, and part of Sonnet 18. Um, I absolutely adore it, and I've always been very big on Shakespeare. We covered a lot of Shakespeare in school. I love the language, and he just executes it so flawlessly.
Mm-hmm.
And that is like a big standout moment for me with Picard. I absolutely adore it. I really do. But yeah, that for me is a big standout moment for Captain Picard. Especially because he just randomly goes into it, and everybody on the bridge is just like, "What the hell?"
Oh yeah, but yeah, Riker and Troy are looking at each other. They're smiling. Worf is like, "What the frick?"
Yeah, and it just like the looks on the faces of the bridge crew when he just busts into Shakespeare. It's just like, it just blows their minds, and I think it blew all the viewers' minds as well, because I don't think they were like expecting that. And I mean, I certainly wasn't. I mean, that is a side of Picard, because I watched everything backwards. Um, that's a side of Picard I always hoped that Patrick Stewart had like put in a little bit of his Shakespearean work into Picard at some point, but yeah, that
Yeah,
was
same.
just on point.
Oh, what? Blanking on the name of the episode, but it was like the first season when Q tried to give Riker the power of Q. He spout off some Shakespeare in that episode as well, and that threw the book at Q, and Q threw that big ass book
Q.
right back at him.
Pat and
Actually,
Q.
yeah. Oh,
Hmm?
Pat and Q.
Was it hide and Q?
I believe it was Pat and Q.
Hmm. But
I,
yeah,
I,
same.
I,
We'll probably
Kate
talk
and Q.
about the say talk about the like Picard and Q a little later, but there's like some other like big episodes for not just Picard as the character, but for Patrick Stewart as well. And say one of the first episodes that comes to mind is Sarek, which
yes.
was a great way of bringing a legacy character into the next generation, because the Vulcan race do live to be about 200 odd years old. When Sarek started suffering from Bandy syndrome, which essentially it's like just a Vulcan version of Alzheimer's. Essentially, you just start
Yeah.
those mental blocks or start breaking down, and you can't control it. So he offers to mind meld with Sarek to give him his strength and stability, and let Sarek dump some of his raw baggage onto him. And just the way the flood of emotions that Picard went through on that one, just like holy crap.
Yeah. That is a very that is a very emotional episode, and it's yeah, it's very intense in general, but that episode never fails to hit me in the feels.
Hmm. Oh, I forgot to mention one thing at the end of the Menage a Troy is after Loxana gets beamed back to the bridge, she's all like, "Oh, Jean-Luc, I didn't know, la la la," and it you can see the level of discomfort in Picard. He walks up to Wesley to say, "Okay, set a course for Beta Z," and just under his breath, like warp 9.
Yeah. Yeah, you see, that's another thing that I love about him as well. You know, he does.
Hey, Paige.
Oh, Paige, hello. I thought she was asleep.
Well, she's about to go to sleep, it looks like. But yeah, just keep it on. So you can listen to us while you go to sleep. Who knows? Yeah, then Jeff, great to have him back after his little road trip. He's driving home and listening to us, so he's participating vicariously. But yeah, saying Sarek, that was a good episode. Darmok, another phenomenal episode for Picard.
Yes. Now that episode is, in a way, it's one of my favorite episodes where it's like extremely Picard central, and in other ways it's not. But the way that he overcomes the language barrier. Well, not overcomes it, but he finds some common ground within that that language barrier, and he put all his heart and soul into that.
Well, say hi to
And
Leftwich, Jeff.
oh yay!
We need to get Leftwich on here one of these days, as well as Hugo.
Oh, I know. Where is Hugo? Honestly, I'm gonna mentally slap him because I love him and miss him. But no, that episode is very intense and it's very frustrating. That episode, you can feel the frustration oozing from them both. But by the end of it, they do find some common ground, and it's lovely to see, even though not only is there a huge language barrier, but Picard also has to, if I can even speak, traverse a very different kind of language as well than what is come across. And I think one of the ways that he did actually overcome it, because that language is all metaphorical. Shakespeare was very big on speaking in metaphors as well. So not only does Patrick Stewart have that background in Shakespeare, but Picard does as well.
Hmm.
And I think that is what helped him a little bit, even though it was never stated. I do believe that Picard's love of Shakespeare and knowledge, and the fact that Shakespeare basically created a new kind of English, it wasn't as frustrating for Picard as it could have been. If that makes any sense at all. But yeah, I love that episode. What are your thoughts, Travis?
Jean-Luc Picard, as you said earlier, Dave, captain of the Stargazer, former Stargazer, well, Constellation class, you know, former captain of the Enterprise D, captain of the Enterprise E, became admiral sometime after the events of Nemesis. And, the thing about, what no one has that, I like to think about him is the explorer part of him. The one the thing that made him wanted to go to the academies. The one thing that made him not go into the family business, or I should say not family business, but in the family, I guess, because I guess they don't use money in the 24th century. He didn't go into the family tradition, wine making and stuff and everything. He talked a lot about, his past, somewhat, but not a whole lot. It went throughout the entire story arc about his childhood from he has such a tough time with his brother Robert, and his father, his mother, more so, he was more so like his mother and stuff, but he was a dreamer.
Mm-hmm.
He dreamed of traveling the stars. What did he say? He said to Hanish in Star Trek oh,
Insurrection.
Insurrection. He was the first
Don't
Picard
die,
to
Katie.
huh?
Katie's having a coughing fit, and she's like, "Don't die."
Okay. He was the first Picard to leave their solar system. The whole story about, he was the you know, to lead their solar system. Also to, he even told her, one of the moments that he felt that everything seemed to stop when he seen his home planet from the other side of the clouds and stuff. So this individual, this man, you know, he had he went to the academy. We all know his first time going to the academies, he didn't get in. It took a second time before his you know uh acceptance was admitted. And he did well for himself during his academy days.
Mhm.
He met Boothby. He got to know quite a few things. Even Admiral J.P. Hansen said that, at Doolittle 2, he, won the what's that
The Academy
the marathon,
Marathon or
the
Decathlon or
Academy Marathon.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, something like that. and he said he wanted to get to know that young cadet and stuff and everything else. So Picard forged a lot of relationships with people across you know Starfleet and whatever. We all saw the background stuff, but like the one thing too that goes back that I see in the entire story arc of season 1 through season 7 is the episode Tapestry.
Mm.
That gave some very interesting clarity of his right out of the academy days. Q, Q basically you could say he was his guardian angel or something, but it was one of those things where I look back at the time I didn't really pay much attention, but as I gotten older, I was like, wow, this is a really really good episode. you know to me that's one of the top 5 episodes
Oh yeah,
for
absolutely. And it's only
that
Q episode without Q in the title.
exactly. It was like, wow, this episode
Gosh.
really struck a chord. you know I really enjoy that because it it showed something in the sense about you know the younger Picard versus the older Picard, about like what's that say, the role not taken, the
Mm.
what if, like Q gave that what if thing and stuff. That was a really good one. And also too, um I gotta say too, I mean, everybody, a lot of people, I mean, I know it's a very much debated thing for the last 35 years, the best of both worlds, part 1 and part 2,
Yeah, I think
especially part 2.
part one, I think premiered 35 years ago this week.
It
That's
sure did.
Wow.
Yeah.
yeah.
Yes, it did.
I'm old.
Oh, I know. I remember seeing it too. A day my birthday with you. I remember too. Encounter at Farpoint. I was just 9 years old. It was shy of my 10th birthday because my birthday's in October 24th, and it came out September the 20th
December.
of 20 the 20 September the 28th of 87.
Hmm.
And I looked at this too when I started, watching Star Trek, because Kirk, he was the Star Trek captain that I always know, Admiral and stuff and everything else. I was, as a kid, I was just kind of like, who is this guy? What's with this, language? I mean, this accent he got and everything else. I wasn't too sure about him and stuff and everything because I grew up on Kirk. Kirk was, the captain, the guy and everything else and stuff and everything. I did not, I was still impressionable young. I mean, I was a kid. But as time went on into the 3rd season, going into the 4th season and stuff and everything, my my thoughts and stuff about that was like, wow, this captain of the Enterprise, future Enterprise versus Kirk's Enterprise is so different in so many ways. You know, he was a scholar, he was a diplomat. Kirk was an explorer too. I'm not gonna he was an explorer and everything else. But as Janeway said to Harry Kim, during those times, Starfleet officers were quick to pull the phasers than to, pull out the, rule books and stuff and everything, the prime invoking the prime directive and everything. But and you saw this with Picard, of course he violated the prime directive, occasionally and stuff and everything. But you know what? The explorer guy that I found, he did he did Sir Patrick Stewart did the character well when he bought the character to uh this Paramount Studios to Star Trek franchise and stuff and everything. Because a lot of us here in the States and stuff and everything, we was I I do remember in later in I guess years later, people was very apprehension about this character stuff. People did not know. People did not understand, you know, they was just a reluctance to, go from Kirk to Picard. And it took time, but it grew on people like myself and
I
everything.
was so
Picard
happy.
did, Picard during the entire run of TNG and the movies that came about and stuff. Even in the standalone Picard Star Trek Picard series, he, as Katie said, he stayed true to him, stayed true to the character and everything else. The character itself stayed true and stuff and everything else. He was one to, in a sense, risk things. In Tapestry, that's one of the things that Q throughout and everything else. What happened if you didn't take risk? And stuff like that. It's like, well, he didn't take a risk and stuff like that. He wouldn't have went up against that Nausicaan, who in, those three Nausicans and getting impaled in the back and getting the artificial heart and stuff and everything else. He played it safe, but the Picard we knew didn't play it safe. In a sense, he took chances and stuff and everything. And I really like that about him. That he took chances. He
Oh, definitely.
to a limited degree and stuff and everything. He knew, like he said, he knew, how do you put it? He was doing a Cardassian border skirmishes and stuff and everything. He mentioned something about that. He was he was on the Stargazer and he was playing hide and seek with a Cardassian ship, and he was trying to stay ahead of them and stuff and everything. He was playing hide and go, well, not hide and seek and stuff and everything. But it was one of those things where he wasn't going to try to engage, you know, the Cardassian stuff when he knew it wasn't warranted by his superiors and stuff like that, because they would have probably had an all-out war and stuff and everything else. But you know, just like the whole thing about when he encountered the Ferengi vessel that he didn't even that didn't identify themselves and stuff and everything. I like that too. They gave it is taught at the academy too, the Picard maneuver. He came up
Oh
with
yeah.
off the cuff, plan, a tactic to confuse the enemy to get his ship out of danger. That was pretty neat. I like that, the Picard maneuver and stuff and everything. But throughout the entire Star Trek, uh, that we know of for the last almost 40 years, almost, that this character, Jean-Luc Picard, has really grown on a lot of people, and especially the new generation. Like, I see a lot of people who wasn't born uh until probably the late 90s, early 2000s, who have been like, they have YouTube channels where they review and rewatch and just react to shows and stuff that we have seen, and stuff, and they find it just so in awe. And they're like, oh my God, for this time and everything else and stuff. Yes, you'd be surprised just how long ago, for some of us who grew up with these shows that, stuck with us and stuff, it helped shape, some people's identity, helped shape some people's ideology and stuff and everything else. I mean, nobody even heard of Sir Patrick Stewart, but Patrick Stewart and everything else until Star Trek came along and stuff. And he bought too, the the writers and producers bought something to Star Trek that none of us, as Katie said that she studied Shakespeare. They study Shakespeare in school and stuff. Brought that level of that Shakespearean actor to the character in the show that we enjoy and stuff and everything else. We seen it time again. You know, um, what was it where Barkley, not Barkley, where uh uh Hugh transported them to Sherwin Forest.
Cupid.
Do y'all, huh?
Cupid.
Yeah.
Cupid. And
That
it was
that
one of
that
those
was that was a really good episode. That's a good Worf moment too. I protest. I am not a married man.
it was. It
Oh, that
was.
was just the best line that Worf could have said.
And you know, and that's the whole thing too. You know that Picard, in a sense, gave a lot of us who didn't know the Shakespearean way of acting. You know, the way to portray and stuff and everything, the portrayal and everything else. I really enjoy it. You know, especially looking back. You know, many years ago, I didn't appreciate it much so when I was younger, but now that I do, I'm like, you know, I really, really enjoy what they done with the Picard character and what Sir Patrick Stewart tried to bring to the character himself. You know, it was really good. I liked it. I liked it. I'm sorry if I'm talking too much.
That's all good. I say, well, we don't have anyone else popping in on the live chat, so it's just the three of us right now. But again, click on the link below if you want to join in the live conversation. We'd love to have you in, see some of your favorite Picard moments, whether it be from Next Generation, the movies, or the Picard series, which I think season 3 of Picard definitely kind of brought in a lot of everything. We got the movie that we should have gotten 20 odd years ago, because we did get a proper send off for the crew, but it left it wide open for the potential
Yeah.
for Star Trek Legacy if that ever happens. But I mean, the cast is still on board saying we want to do it, let's make it happen. But Paramount just wants to be dumb in that regard.
Well, there's a lot of things that's going on with Paramount right now with
Yeah, the Skydance
trying
merger
to
and all that.
yeah, all the merger stuff like that. Right now they're trying to keep a lot of things, you know, constrained and stuff. And, you know, especially with just recently we came off of a writer strike and SAG strike and stuff. And that pushed a lot of things, believe it or not, that actually pushed a lot of things back and stuff and everything. It delayed and stuff and everything. So whether that get made, you know, something like that gets the green light and everything else, it would be we won't hear something like that. We will not hear about it until either next year or later this year, because the merger, that's the one thing right now that's happening in Paramount right now is the acquisition, getting that acquisition finalized so they can be done with it and stuff and everything. So if anybody's still thinking about, like, you know, when is it gonna happen, what, it's up in the air. You know, it's up in the air to the studio, and the studio actually may cancel it. You know, who knows what we know.
Yeah, I was saying that Paramount's already announced that even though season 3 is finally going to be airing in a couple weeks for Strange New Worlds, so we'll have new episodes of Trek to be talking about for the next 2 months after that. But they've already announced that season 5 is going to be the last season. They still need to shoot season 4, but as long as we don't have a big gap between seasons like we did because of that writer's strike, so
Yeah.
we'll be getting that. And then Starfleet Academy, that should be hopefully coming out sometime around this time next year. I'm saying, so we'll just have to wait and see how that comes about. But another good episode, of course, you kind of touched base on already, Best of Both Worlds, and
Yeah.
then the following episode, Family, where we actually see Picard as a broken individual. He's always put on the brave face. He's always like he's the captain. He can't appear vulnerable at all in front of the crew. And when things finally came to a head, it was just ironically a windstorm blows through just as he and his brother are fighting in the vineyard. He finally admits that, just like, the
Do
atrocities
you
that he.
remember last week when I quoted uh Professor Summick, when Benjamin Sisko asked Dax, did Professor Summick still
Yeah.
teach moral and ethical as a burden of command?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that, you know, I mean, I was just thinking about that. I was like, you know, that's one of the things too that a lot of, like, you see that him and Cisco about. Cisco was different, but, like, you know, Picard, you had that, like, you know, separating everything. What did when Vosh came to the when she visited the Enterprise and she was asking everybody about they all said the one thing, the common denominator was the captain is a very private man. He's a private
Yes.
man. He doesn't talk about his personal stuff.
Yeah, he doesn't talk his emotions. Even with Troy, he's just like he's very bottled up. He leaves those emotions, doesn't let them out, essentially. And of course, when he finally lets it all out, he gets giddy with Dr. Crusher and has a kid. That he wasn't fully aware that she had a child because she cut him out.
She cut everybody off.
Completely just she retreated from everybody for however old that Jack
2
was,
decades.
at least.
Yeah.
But
There
when
is one
Picard,
episode.
when Picard realized that Jack Crusher was his son, and say you could just see the relief in his face, and Dr. Crusher just like didn't say a word, and he knew that just that this is my kid.
Did she date him after her ex-husband? It's just like, wow, you took the man that you had, relations with, had a child with him, and named your child after your ex-husband. That's
But even Picard said he would have gladly called him that anyway, because Beverly's ex-husband, well, I say ex-husband, they were still married when he died, but, Beverly's husband was Picard's best friend.
Mm-hmm.
He would have, he even said he'd have chosen that name for Jack anyway. So I don't see anything wrong with that. I actually find it quite sweet in a way, because there's no animosity there, there's no jealousy, there's nothing. It's just remembrance, really.
I can understand him calling him Jack, but throwing Crusher in there, it's like traditionally, you take your father's last name, and it's like, did Jack take the Picard name? Did he even did
No,
by the time in the Last Generation episode in Star Trek
no,
Picard,
no. He
he didn't.
Jack Crusher.
And that's when I kind of I have a little trouble. It's like, dude, you find out who your father was. He's a well-respected retired admiral, 4-star admiral, and stuff. It would have been and for Picard, because uh, in in Generations, when he was talking to Troy in his quarters, he was talking about, like,
The family
the
line.
reason why he never had children, because he saw his nephew as the continuing lineage of the Picard line, and
Yeah.
he didn't have to worry about all that and everything else and stuff and everything, because that's something that he never thought about and everything else. For him, it was just explore and be himself and everything else. And for me, it's just like, not saying that he had to, but it's just like, it would have been a little touching in a sense while they was traveling to, Jack's assignment, that it the writers would have thrown in, about not only he getting fast tracked it through the academies. He changed his name. Not so much changed the name, but he added to his name, Jack Crusher Picard. Like, his middle name could have been Crusher, or something like that, and everything could be like, because it would have been a touching thing to hear them on a bridge of, and I cannot. I'm just saying this, and I don't want I know I'm going to probably get hate, but the name, the Titan, the Enterprise G was just plain stupid. It was absolutely
Yes,
bonkers and
thank
stupid.
you. Yes, it
I
absolutely was.
did not like. I I figured it was going to be called the Picard or something, but the Enterprise G. I'm sorry, whatever. But needless to say,
Yeah,
all the debate aside, it would have been nice to hear them refer to him as Ensign Picard. Because it'd have been like, oh my God, he took his
no,
father's namesake and stuff and everything else, It'd have been like one of those little things where, he see that, you know, he's proud to be a Picard and a Crusher, because his mom and stuff and everything. And he's proud to have the namesake of, his mother's dead husband, you know. I mean, that's just my take on it. But not saying that they should have, but I would have if I was in the writers room with the writers and stuff. I probably would have suggested, maybe we throw in that after a year later and stuff and everything, things with Jack and Picard. Yeah, he actually took the name Picard.
no, I'm glad that he didn't because for me that would have just been too cliche. It, he is Jack Crusher, but everybody knows that he's Picard's son, and he.
I
I
mean,
think that
there was
he
Jack.
didn't change his name to keep the honor of his mother because she raised him single-handedly and everything that they went through. And I do believe that that's one of the main reasons why he kept his name and he didn't take on his father's name. But I have got to give my hats off to Ed Spaliers, who plays Jack, because he was absolutely brilliant as Jack Crusher. And he really did embody some of the traits of Jean-Luc. And like we were talking about Tapestry earlier, and how much of a rebel Picard used to be, in a way, and like the story that he told Jack about him and Beverly's first husband and like some of the trouble that they used to get into, and that is Jack, and I mean, even though he's named Jackie, he's a very Jack lad. Um, and he really does embody some of the elements of a younger Jean-Luc, and I really do take my hat off to Ed Spaliers for how he portrayed that role. It was beautifully done, and I actually think that Picard handled it quite well. All of a sudden he's a father, and his son is in the firing line of this like monster of a ship, this cycle of a woman who I fell in love with. She was awesome. I absolutely love her. But you know, just all of a sudden that realization that he is actually a father, and this Jack the Lad rebel who's caused all this trouble is his son. And instantly he was just like, yeah, fuck this, we're fighting our way out of it, they're not having my son. Um, and But even though he flipped on a dime, like with his attitude towards Jack, he still remained Picard. And he was always consistent, regardless of any evolution. He still remained himself at his core. And the story arc of Picard season 3 especially was beautiful to see. Because we've seen so many sides to Picard, And I mean, there's two things that I do want to speak about. The way he handled the situation in Measure of a Man.
Mhm.
That is one of my all-time favorite episodes of Trek, and the way he defended Data and how he did it was just, it was beautiful to watch. And it kind of, I know that now this is going to sound really weird, but bear with me and try and follow my strange braining. The way that he defended Data in Measure of a Man, the passion in which he spoke, I saw that same passion in Picard season 3 when he realized he was a father. And now he has always been very protective of Data. Always. And he's always had great respect for Data as well. And with how naive Data could be at times because of his lack of emotion, and like he was still trying to understand humanity, I think in a way Picard kind of like took him under his wing, and Data was like a son to him, as well as like a very close friend. And some of the conversations that they had, you know, like when Picard said, "You are a race of one," you know, that just topped it off for me. And even though he was still being captain, he kind of put that aside a little bit, and he had a really good talk with Data. And that was the first time in a way that I'd seen almost his paternal side. And he always seemed to be like that with Data. And then obviously many years later down the line, he was a father when Jack came about, you know. And the way he spoke to Jack, the way he interacted with him, it kind of resembled, or to me anyway, it kind of reminded me of how he's always been with Data. And I did see the correlation there, because Data's always been like a little kid. And yeah, that I think that like Data was kind of like a parent in trial in a way for Picard. And it was lovely to see that over the years, and then to see how he ended up being with Jack. He's never been like that with anybody else either, you know. Even with Wesley, it was never like that with Wesley. Even though he was a child, he was Beverly's child, he was only like that with Data and Jack. And I actually kind of find that pretty sweet. I mean, I don't know if any of that made sense, or if you agree or disagree, either of you, but that's kind of like what I see. What are your thoughts?
Go ahead, Travis.
You know, I never thought about anything, any of that stuff that you said, in sense of, you know, thinking Data's naivete being in such a way that Picard taught him, tried to teach him the values of humanity, or try to be human and stuff and everything else. Looking at, like, you know, it was that, you know, everything was a teachable moment. and stuff. I never thought about it in that sense. I always thought of it in the sense of a mentor, a mentor
Mm.
capacity and stuff and everything. Somebody who, someone in the sense of, seeing, the character Data, because he formed relationships with every single of the characters that we know, the primary characters that we know of in
Yeah.
TNG and everything else and stuff. He, when it came to Data, it seemed like he had a more he took on a more, you know, not so much delicate role, but so much of a more, look, you are a life form in the sense that doesn't understand what it means to be a biological life form, especially being human and stuff and everything else. And Picard took it upon himself to guide Theta through the aspects of humanity and stuff and everything. And it gave Picard too, I guess, you said too, in the sense of, the early parts of learning to, you know, have some, father figure aspects and stuff and everything. We already know too, especially in the disaster episode, you know, with kids and stuff and everything else. Picard, about the whole child, about the whole, like, being so standoffish with kids and stuff and everything. He just, for some reason, it seemed like, he want to keep that part. He cared about, children, but for him it was just nothing for him in the sense of guarding them, in the sense of, like, I don't have kids of my own. I don't have any connections to kids and stuff and everything. I was a kid myself, but, like, he grew up out of his, aspect and everything else. And when it came to Data, like you said, about him being, having a kid like quality, about, like, seeing the universe in a different way, and he had such an unbiased way of looking at, the universe around and stuff and everything. And Picard tried to navigate him through, like, the ins and out. Do you remember the episode where they went back to Tasha Yar's sister, or Tasha Yar, home planet,
Ashara.
and yes. So, they in a sense, the story basically was they find out, whatever they know about, the Enterprise, that, they had a crew member who was born there, and they confirmed that she had a sister.
The episode
And
was Legacy was the episode.
yes, the thing about that, when at the end, where Data walked into the Riker's quarters and asked him about, the whole thing, he was perplexed about the level of deception that all of them had about Bashar. And it was one of those things where, Riker tried to explain to him, you know, about, they all did not see what was most likely right in front of them and stuff, because they assumed that if she's Tasha's sister, she's going to be just like Tasha. It turns out she wasn't, but she did actually show that she did actually spend time with Data, and she cared for Data, and stuff and everything else. And he said to Riker, at the end, that always, resonated with me and stuff and everything, that he would never understand how someone can be deceptive and betrayal of another person, and have that kind of, deceptive qualities and stuff and everything else, and Riker is explaining to him about, like, well, that's the part of being human. You take the risk of opening up in a chance of getting hurt, but Data wouldn't know that he doesn't get hurt, stuff. And he said, maybe that's probably for the best that I don't experience that emotion and stuff and everything else, because you could see Riker was hurt. A lot of them were hurt and everything in that time. But that was a teachable moment in the sense of, you know, he tried to understand deception, in the sense, the level of deception that they experienced, you know, because they had someone close to them who had a family member that basically took them, took them for a just made them look like fools and stuff and everything because they trusted her and stuff and everything. And it was sad and stuff. But all in all, I see when Picard found out that he was a father, and it was only just I mean the season 3 Picard was short and everything else, but they we try to make this stuff as we go along and everything, and they try to make it up and everything. That he can't get back the time that 20 years have gone by. He can't get back that and everything else and stuff. He tried his best and everything else. Even Beverly said that, I told him who you were. It was his choice whether or not he wanted to meet you and stuff and everything else. It's crazy that how they met, how they, played down how they met and stuff and everything. But we did see in a backstory where, did go see him. Picard didn't know him, but he was approached by other was it cadets?
Mm.
Other cadets and stuff, and he was trying to eat. He was just trying to eat some fish, and stuff and everything. And he, was explaining to them, and you saw at the end, Jack was wearing that and stuff, and he made a comment, and Picard didn't know who it was, but he said something about family and stuff. He said Starfleet's all the family I need and stuff and whatnot and stuff. But things changed around by the end of the season, about the end of that season and stuff and everything else, because it, like Katie said, he did not until that moment where he didn't realize that oh my God, I really have a kid, and my former body, I'm stuck in this android body. I couldn't produce no kids and stuff like that. But he's in, which I still thought that whole thing about putting him in the android. There's something. It
It was the only way to save him, though.
Huh?
It was the only way to save Picard, though.
Just like how Spock died in the Wrath of Khan, I really thought that was a really beautiful way of setting out a character that we have come to love through the TOS. Well, in the TOS area, like a lot of people from the TOS area and stuff like that. The Spock character, it was beautiful way how they, sent his death and stuff and everything. Not saying, I mean, we knew there was going to be other, there's 2 more seasons. He was scheduled for 2 more seasons and stuff for, the series and stuff. I always wonder what would happen if they gave Picard the glorious death, unlike they gave Kirk in Generations. They gave Spock in the Wrath of Khan, and stuff. It's like this this a death worthy of somebody of his stoic nature, something of his prowess and stuff and everything. The Admiral Picard that people will remember through time and memorial, as long as the Federation exists and stuff and everything else. I kind of felt like that was a kind of cop out, a cheap way of saying, oh, we're gonna put the script and everything else, and and I understand what they was trying to do and stuff, but it's like, if you're gonna do somebody's death of that nature, do it. Don't try to have some sort of logistic way of twisting about how finding a workaround about them keeping themselves, because we respect a good character death. Like I respected Spock's death. I mean, that was such a, I remember too when I first seen it, I cried when I saw Spock's, I had a little tear because I was young and stuff, but I remember I was like, oh my God, Spock's dead. But then he brought it back and,
I'll say we only have a few minutes left, and say we want to get back to talking about Picard specifically. But say the one episode that really stands out for Picard's arc would be the Inner Light, when he lived about 30, 40 odd years in the course of a half an hour. Say when he thought he was all in a simulation, which turns out he was. but it just, yeah, he lived that entire lifetime in the course of 20 odd minutes, and it just took a little bit of time for him to readjust to the fact that, yeah, he's only was out cold
Yeah.
for half an hour. 28 minutes, I think, was the exact number, or 25 minutes, but it's under a half an hour.
Yeah.
But yeah, with him,
I adore that
him,
episode, and I love the tune that he plays on that flute. It is so beautiful. It's quite haunting in a way, especially knowing the history of the flute as well and how he came about it. But it's such a beautiful melody. Yeah, that every time I hear that tune, it really does hit me in the feels, especially because I know the history of it.
Fun fact about that flute, it doesn't even work. It was just it was a prop made up thing. It didn't even work. It was actually somebody else. You know, he was just moving his fingers and stuff and everything. The Resican flute, it didn't even work. It didn't even work.
He did it so well though. I mean, usually when you when you see a character on screen playing an instrument that they're not really playing, you can tell. But Patrick Stewart did that so well. It was very believable that he was actually playing the flute.
yeah, but it's a big quote. That's probably like one of the biggest quotes that I like. Seize the time, live now, make now the most precious time. Now will never come again. It
Yeah.
just the way he delivered that to the Maribor, I believe was his daughter's name in the episode.
Maribor.
Yeah, see, that quote keeps popping in my head randomly because once now is gone, it's just like you lose those opportunities. I mean, I say with my sobriety journey, I'm saying I just gotta live in the now, make it most important because who knows what tomorrow will bring. I mean, tomorrow could be a better
Exactly.
day. Tomorrow can be a whole lot worse. So I just gotta seize the carpe diem, seize the moment.
Oh yeah. And I truly believe that. But
But
there is one thing that I do need to mention before we end the show, and that is First Contact. Now, everybody should know by now that that is the whole reason I love Trek, because I hated it before that. I was like 14 years old. I'd only ever known William Shatner, and he made me hate Star Trek. And the the whole like I said, I've got a lot of respect for TOS. I have, but I can't stand it, and Shatner is the main reason. But I actually got in trouble at school because of Star Trek First Contact, because
oh dear.
by the time the opening credits finished, and just as the Admiral was calling Jean-Luc to say that the Borg are invading, my homework was pushed to the side, and I was completely enthralled in this movie that I didn't even know was Star Trek at the time. It wasn't until about 5 minutes later that I was told it was Star Trek, and I'm just like, no way. But the opening credits, the music, the just the Borg element, and just the zoom out, it enthralled me. I was completely hooked from that minute, and I completely fell in love with Star Trek. And we saw almost every single side of Picard that you could possibly see in that movie. And I did not know Picard's backstory. I didn't, because the only Trek I'd ever seen was TOS. So I didn't know the backstory of Picard. I didn't know the backstory of Data or any of the crew. I didn't even know who the Borg were. And I understood that movie so much. And bearing in mind, I was like 14 at the time, but because of everything that happened and how Picard was, and just everything, I understood Picard. And like I said, he was he was the first character on screen that I've ever done a psychological profile of. And because I found him fascinating, and also Data as well. And I fell in love with Trek because of Picard and Data. And like I said, you see so much of him in that episode. And over the years, I've heard a lot of people say, "Oh, Picard blowing up at Lily like that, it was so out of character for him. Why did they do that?" And I'm just sat there and I'm like, "Whoa, hold on a minute. That is not out of character for Picard. That is perfectly acceptable after everything he's been through and everything he's held in over the years." And somebody's there basically having a go at him without any understanding. He's bound to blow, and even though I didn't know his backstory right from the off, I perfectly understood why he blew up at Lily the way he did. And he just had enough after all these years, after everything he'd held back. He let it all out, and unfortunately, she was his outlet. And so that wasn't out of character for Picard. That was coming. That was a long time coming. And, it was a very important moment for Picard as well, because I don't think even he realized the extent of his trauma until that moment. And that holds a very special place in my heart. And my birthday's just Contact Day. But yeah, Picard made me love Trek and Data as well, of course. But I couldn't wait to watch Next Generation after that. It was a beautiful journey that I took, all because of Picard. And it opened me up to so much. And I'm very thankful to Patrick Stewart for taking on that role. I really am, because nobody else could have played it like him.
Well, that being said, we are out of time. Thank you for those that have joined us in the chats. And say, hopefully one of these days we might get one or two of you live on camera so we can talk normally. But next week we're going to still kind of focus on characters versus specific episodes. And June being Pride Month, we have to talk about this episode in particular, but also just LGBT representation in general in Star Trek, because there's just been, I say they know how to push boundaries. As they rejoined from this episode with Dax and Khan, a different Khan, is saying, saying they know how to push the envelope. But then once Discovery came around with Stamets and Colbert, that's like the first, finally they were putting gay characters at the forefront. First Contact, Lieutenant Hawk was supposed to be an openly gay character, but that got cut because the studios thought that would freak people out. So there's a great beta canon novel called Rogue, which kind of explores Hawk and his partner in Unjoined Trill, which ironically we're talking about Khan and Dax. But see, I have to bounce so I can make it to my meeting. So until next week, may Spock be with y'all.
Cool.
Good night.